Alright, so example 5 of section 5. We are talking about the array list, and this will be the last video of the first semester. So to cut to the chase, an array list is an array. It's a class that was written by Microsoft. As you can see, it lives in the system.collections library. So if you hover over it, you can see the fully qualified name is system.collections.ArrayList. So Microsoft was kind enough to write this class for us. And it is a tricked out array. So inside of the array list, there's an array. And if I go to the definition of array list, you can see that it comes with all these beautiful methods that we can use. There's a remove at, there's an insert at, insert, sort, convert it to a plain old array, binary search. So there's all these crazy methods that we can use on it. So clearly this is going to be more powerful than a simple array. I'm not sure if there's, offhand I can't think to myself if there's any disadvantage to using something a little more heavyweight than the plain old array, other than the fact that you might not need all the stuff that comes with it. I have to think about it. I surprised myself with that question. Anyway, I guess you use an array unless you need something more than an array. Anyway, the array list is more powerful than the array. It has a lot of things that you can do with it. And in this code, example 5, which is on GitHub, I'm going to show you the simplest example that you could have of what you can do with an array list that you can't do with an array. And you can see that right away with this first while loop. So my while loop says, ask the user if they want to add another item, and just keep doing it until they don't say yes, basically. So this while loop is going to keep going until the user answers with something that does not start with a Y. So they will be able to add as many widgets as they want. And what my code is doing is I say create a widget, and this is the important part right here. This is the big win of the array list. I can just say add. So when you think about that for a second, the array list has an add method on it, and I don't know how it works. This is encapsulation. This is information hiding. This is the buttons on the front of the microwave, and I have no idea what the inside of the microwave is doing. On the inside of the array list, somehow it's destroying the array, creating a bigger array, and adding our new information while retaining the values that were there before. So we're able to continuously add new things to the array list as many times as we want without worrying about how it's happening. And we have the utmost faith that Microsoft coded it in the most efficient way possible. So we're sure it's fast and that it works great. And we don't have to maintain an array of a certain size. We just instantiate the array list, and then we start saying add, 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 add. We can add as many things as we want to it. So that right there is something that you can't do with an array. You can't declare an array and create it and say it's of size 3, and then all of a sudden, add 5 more things to it. You just can't do it. So the array list has a lot of inner workings and code that handles complicated things that we don't know about on the inside, whereas an array is just simple. It's just an array. So I just wanted you to know that there's a lot of things in .NET that are like this, where Microsoft creates us a class that does some very powerful things, and that we just get to use it and don't have to worry about how it works. So this is very typical. I create an array list and I just start adding things to it. So what is this method I'm calling? I'm saying widget equals get new widget. Well, this method that I wrote down here simply instantiates a widget, asks the user for the ID and description, and then returns it to us. So that's easy. Won't worry about that anymore. So really, it's just saying keep doing this, and I don't know how many times this is going to happen, because if the user keeps saying yes, the user could keep saying yes for hours and keep adding new widgets, and the array list is going to keep taking them like a champ and adding them to itself. So that's really powerful. And then on line 18, I just do my old for each loop, and I say for each widget in the list, print it. And that's the entire program. So let's see if I can run this thing. Add another item, I'll say yes. Item number 1, description 1. I'll just do this. Add another yes. 2, 2, yes. 3, 3, yes. 4, 4, yes. So the, oops, oh yeah, 5, 5, no, and then there we go, it printed them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the point being is that the array list, well, there's a couple of points here. First point is that the array list is basically an array that can do a whole lot more than a normal array can do. So I guess that's all I can say about that, but more than just the array list existing, I want you guys to understand that this library, system.collections, has more than just an array list inside of it. It's got an array list, it's got a stack, it's got a queue, it's got a hash table. It's got a bunch of types and classes that help you aggregate data and give you access to a whole bunch of really useful methods to be able to manipulate and change and work with the data. So an array, as we learned previously, is simply taking a bunch of values or objects and putting them in an ordered list. And that's fine, but I just also wanted you guys to be aware that there are lots of classes, and it's not only system.collections either. Not only is there a lot of classes in that library, but there's a lot of libraries in .NET to help you do really complicated things. So, sometimes I get people asking me, in the past I've given people assignments that say, like, create an array and then add something to the array, or keep adding things to the array, and if you need to add more to the array, then make a bigger array and copy the things over. And the people will say, oh, why can't I just use an array list? And the point is, even if there's these classes that Microsoft wrote to do these things for you, you want to have the basic skills to be able to use an array, because even if you would never use something, you're going to come across and read code out there in the world that other people wrote, and they're not always going to write it the same way that you would have. So reading code is just as important of a skill, reading and understanding other people's code, and in that way you kind of need to master all aspects of the language. And if you didn't understand an array, you wouldn't have a deeper understanding of how the array list was doing things behind the scenes. And when things start going wrong and you need to debug the problem and try to use your creativity to think of what could be going wrong to come up with potential solutions, you really need to be able to understand holistically what's happening. So that's why we start with declaring variables, and we move on to being able to create arrays of variables, and from there you can imagine more complicated solutions. So I would expect, and like I said, I've given examples, or I've given assignments in the past. I would expect, if I gave you an assignment, to write your own class array list that internally inside of the class was able to manage an array, and based on the things inside of the array, expand or contract the array, allow the user of your objects to be able to add new items to the array, as many as they want, without worrying about how it works. I would expect you guys to be able to do that. So this exists in .NET, and it exists in system.collections, but at the same time, it is crucial to be able to understand how to use arrays and understand how they work, and understand what the difference is between basically a primitive array, which is nothing but a bunch of variables that are aggregated contiguously in memory. The difference between that and actually writing a big class that internally handles everything and then exposes a bunch of public methods in its public API to help people have simple access to complex behaviors. So that's pretty much it. I'm not really going to ask you guys to do anything too complicated with arrays. I've tried in the past to urge my students to do a little bit more complex stuff, but since it's the end of the semester and the final exam is coming, usually it's not such a great idea. So what I do is I start out the second semester with a lot of fun stuff, like sometimes like a checkers game, or a slightly simplified version of chess, something that involves a two-dimensional array and sometimes double loops, and that gets people back interested in loops and arrays again at the start of the second semester. And then we go right into using collections and generics and inheritance and interfaces and more fun things like that. So hopefully in the first semester we've covered all of the basics to the point where we can start talking about more of the advanced things. And really the focus in section 5 here is pretty simple. It's, I think, the easiest section of all 5 sections in the class, because it's really just focused on arrays and loops, which at this point, after mastering the harder things, which were first just understanding programming and variables and allocation of memory, and then making the jump to object-oriented programming with classes and instantiating objects and statics and methods, defining methods, constructors, parameters. That stuff it's hard to do that in a short amount of time. But then by the time you kind of are able to have that understanding develop in the first couple of months, then you end up with arrays and loops, and it's pretty easy, because these things are very syntactically similar to previous items, and they're pretty predictable and easy to follow. They're not really as complicated as using classes and understanding lexical scope. So hopefully this turns out to be the easiest assignment for you guys, and that will pretty much do it for the last section. I'm debating on whether or not to do a video for the final assignment, but it might just be written instructions, so we'll see how that goes. But either way, keep checking on Blackboard for announcements, and of course keep coming to class. And at the end, so like this concludes the end of the section 5 material, and the week before the final we'll all be talking about the logistics of how we're going to handle that. But barring any unforeseen consequences, this is probably the last video for the semester, and anything I do from here will probably be second semester stuff. So hopefully that was not too bad for you guys. And as always, I appreciate you guys listening. I know I can rant a little bit, and I don't have the clearest voice in the world, but I do my best. So, oh yeah, once again, don't forget, I'll end with this, and you might remember in the very first video of this C# programming playlist, I mentioned that I did all of these videos from scratch this year in 2015, and 2 years ago I had done these all before, but it was for my web development class, so I kind of burned through them, and I wanted to get into more detail this semester, or this year, so I redid them all from scratch. I feel like I started off really carefully, but then I started kind of getting more impatient. Maybe if section 4 and 5 I went off course a little bit, or if I went too fast or too slow, just let me know. So kind of to finish off, I would just say any feedback you guys have on the entire playlist for the C# class, feel free to tell me in person or email me your thoughts, because no matter what, I'll probably be doing these videos again at some point, because things are changing all the time. But I'd really appreciate feedback, so to help me do this better from now on, and always trying to figure out better ways of ordering this stuff or explaining it or doing anything to improve how easy it makes it to learn the material. So with that, I will say thank you for listening once again, and I will talk to you guys soon.